When the world feels like it's spinning out of control, you might ask yourself, what good is a poem? What can a painting really do? Well, today, we're going to dig into one really powerful answer to that question, and it's all wrapped up in a single, dense statement. We're going to break it down piece by piece and see why art might just be more crucial than we ever thought, especially right now.
Right off the bat, our source pulls no punches. It starts with this incredibly heavy phrase, in the midst of apocalyptic terror. Whoa. Yeah, this isn't just about a bad news day or, tough times. This is meant to conjure up a very specific, very deep feeling of total chaos and collapse.
So that right there, that sets up the big question for us. If you're living in a world that feels like that, what can a novel or a piece of music possibly offer? I mean, what is its job? What's its function when everything feels broken? Okay, so before we can even talk about the solution art provides, we really have to get our heads around the problem. Let's define what our source actually means by apocalyptic terror.
And this is so important. We're not talking about a literal end-of-the-world movie kind of apocalypse. It's describing a psychological state, a feeling. It's that deep, collective dread that settles in when all the rules and systems you thought you could count on just seem to be crumbling.
It's that pit in your stomach, that gnawing anxiety that comes from pure uncertainty. When you look around and meaning itself feels like it's dissolving, and you have no idea what's next, that is the terror we're talking about. It's a full-blown crisis of meaning.
All right, so if the problem is this huge crisis of meaning, this feeling of overwhelming chaos, what kind of art could possibly go up against that? As you might guess, our source argues it's not just any art. It has to be a very specific kind.
And the answer lies in something called a visionary oeuvre. I know, it sounds a little fancy, maybe even intimidating, but stick with me, because once we break down what that actually means, its power becomes, wow, it's incredibly clear.
So first up, let's just tackle that word, oeuvre. This is the key. We're not talking about one single masterpiece, a flash in the pan. We are talking about an artist's entire life's work, the whole shebang. It's a sustained, dedicated effort to build a world, a perspective, a way of seeing.
And this body of work, it has to have two things going for it. First, it's got to be compelling. It grabs you by the collar and just refuses to let you go. But even more importantly, it has to be visionary. It gives you a complete, coherent, structured way of seeing everything. Think about an author like Ursula K. Le Guin. Her entire collection of novels builds this consistent, deeply thoughtful universe that gives us a whole new lens to look back at our own society. That's a visionary oeuvre.
And this is where you really see the battle lines drawn. It sets up this incredible contrast. On one side, you have terror, which is all about chaos, meaninglessness, and dread. And on the other, you have this art that responds with the exact opposites: structure, vision, and insight. It's like the perfect antidote.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this actually work? How can a structured artistic vision really push back against that feeling of a world in collapse? Let's get into the mechanics of it. And here it is. This is probably the most important point of this whole explainer. This kind of art is not an escape. It's not pretending the chaos and the terror aren't there. No, it does the exact opposite. It stares directly at all that chaos, and through its own internal logic and its own structure, it reaffirms that meaning is still possible in spite of it all.
And this process, this reaffirmation, it kind of works in 3 steps. First, the art has to acknowledge the chaos. It has to be honest about it. Then, it imposes its unique vision, like laying a brand new, clearer map over a confusing and messy landscape. And in doing that, through that very act of creation, it reveals a deeper pattern, a hidden meaning that maybe we couldn't see before.
This is such a fascinating idea, right? But what does it actually mean for us here and now? Why does this particular function of art matter in our day-to-day lives?
Because, well, in our own turbulent times, this kind of art can be an anchor. When we really engage with a powerful, visionary body of work, it's this profound reminder that we humans can create order from chaos, that we can find and make meaning, even in the darkest of places. In a way, it's an act of defiance, and it's an act of hope. And that brings us right back to where we started, to the full statement. But now, after breaking it all down, every single word just hits differently, doesn't it? For his compelling and visionary oeuvre, that in the midst of apocalyptic terror reaffirms the power of art. See, it's not just some fancy phrase anymore. It's a complete argument for why art isn't a luxury, it's a necessity.
So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. What art does that for you?
What book series? What musician's entire catalog? What director's collection of films? What provides that anchor for you? What is the visionary art that helps you find meaning when things feel chaotic?